Chapter 9 of our text deals with interpersonal relationships, specifically the dynamics of interpersonal relationships. It's made up of three sections. One is why do we form relationships, two, models of relational dynamics, and then three, communicating about relationships. First thing to consider is that a relationship is less a thing and more of a process, because it involves two individuals at least who are alive and are changing, and so there's a dynamic process that we engage in. So why do we form relationships with certain people and not with others? Sometimes we don't have a choice. Children don't have a choice in regard to their parents. The same thing in regard to employees don't have a choice in regard to their colleagues. We do have some factors that have been identified that influence our choice of relational partners. The first is appearance. We say that we should judge others on the basis of how they act, but very often we do the opposite. We judge them on how they look. So physical appearance seems to be the primary basis for attraction. So even if your appearance isn't beautiful or handsome by societal standards, so remember these two things. First, after initial impressions have passed, ordinary people with pleasing personalities are likely to be judged as attractive. And then second, physical factors become less important as the relationship progresses. As romantic relationships develop, partners create somewhat of a positive illusion regarding the other person as more physically attractive over time. The second one is similarity. And the similarity thesis says that the strongest determinant of relationship formation is similarity to the other person. That similarity may be in the area of politics or religion, especially those two. They seem to be the best predictors of mate choice. Significantly more, may I say, than attraction to physical appearance or even personality traits. So similarity plays an important role in initial attraction. Research suggests that deciding you like someone often leads to perceptions of similarity rather than the other way around. That is very interesting to consider. So there are several reasons why similarity is a strong foundation for relationships. First, similarity can be validating. Self-validating, you might say. The fact that another person shares your beliefs, your tastes, and values is a form of ego support. Second, similarity makes others more predictable and more likely to enjoy the same activities you do. And then you have the wonderful opportunity really to make confident predictions about the other person's behavior, and that reduces uncertainty and anxiety that is initially in a relationship. The third explanation for the similarity thesis is that when we learn that other people are similar to us, we may assume that they'll probably like us, so we in turn like them. The next factor is complementarity. Complementarity. I said it correctly. Differences strengthen a relationship when they are complementary, when each partner's characteristics satisfies the other's need. So relationships also work well when the partners agree that one will exercise control in certain areas and the other will take the lead in different ones. And so there's a sense of they are complementing each other's skills and abilities. Disagreement over control issues, however, can cause strains. So partners in successful marriages were similar enough to satisfy each other physically and mentally, but were different enough to meet each other's needs and keep the relationship interesting. So successful couples find ways to keep a balance between their similarities and differences while adjusting to the change that occur over the years. The next factor that influences our choice is rewards. Some relationships are based on an economic model called the social exchange theory. This approach suggests that we seek out people who give us rewards that are greater or equal to the costs we encounter in dealing with the relationship itself. Rewards first are any outcomes we desire. So they may be tangible, a nice place to live, a high-paying job. They may be intangible in terms of prestige, emotional support, companionship. Costs, on the other hand, are undesirable outcomes, unpleasant work, emotional pain, and so forth. And so there's a simple formula that captures when you stay and when you leave the relationship. Rewards minus costs equals outcome. When the rewards are greater than the costs, you stay in the relationship. When the costs are greater than the rewards, that's when you decide whether you should leave the relationship or not. So we use this formula to calculate whether a relationship is a good deal, or whether a relationship is not worth the effort based on the negative outcomes. It may seem a little cold and calculating and kind of an economic theory to relationships, but it can be very appropriate. When one partner feels under-benefited, it often leads to relational disruption or termination. Remember, costs and rewards don't exist in isolation. We define them, by comparing a certain situation with alternatives. What's out there in terms of an alternative partner? So the alternatives may be seen in terms of two factors. One is the comparison level, and that is that it is your minimum standard of what behavior is acceptable. What can you and will you put up with in this relationship? The second one is your comparison level of alternatives. And this refers to a comparison between the rewards that you receive in this relationship and those you could expect to receive in another relationship. So when a sense of connection is lacking in a romantic relationship, the draw of intimacy from romantic alternatives becomes particularly strong. You start shopping around. So social exchange theorists suggest that communicators unconsciously use this calculus to decide whether to form and stay in relationships. But there are other choices other than being stuck in situations where the costs outweigh the rewards. First, you might make sure that you are judging your present relationship against a realistic comparison level. Expecting a situation to be perfect certainly is not reality, really. It's not true to reality. There will be a certain amount of stress and anxiety in all relationships. If you decide that your present situation truly falls below your confidence level, your comparison level, you might explore whether there are alternatives you haven't considered. And then finally, the skills introduced throughout this textbook may help you negotiate a better relationship with the other person. The next factor that influences our choice of relationships is competency. We like to be around talented people because we hope that their skills and abilities will rub off on us. On the other hand, we are uncomfortable around those who are too competent, perhaps because we look bad by comparison. And we attracted most to competence in others when it's accompanied by a warm rather than a cool personality. We like competence in others, but we also like people who are somewhat flawed because they remind us of ourselves. The next factor is proximity. We are likely to develop relationships with people with whom we interact frequently. Proximity leads to liking. So we develop friendships with neighbors, where we live, individuals that sit closer to us in a classroom. We choose a mate with whom we often cross paths. Proximity even has a role in social media, where messaging or chatting can create virtual proximity. So when it comes to social networking sites, cultural proximity, and that is similarity, outweighs geographic proximity. So proximity allows us to get more information about people and benefit from a relationship with them. The next factor is disclosure, and that is Telling others important information about yourself certainly can help build liking in both individuals. Sometimes the basis of this attraction comes from learning about ways we are similar, either in experience or in attitudes. So sharing private information is a form of respect and trust. A kind of liking that we've already seen increases attractiveness. Now, not all disclosure leads to liking. Research shows that the key to satisfying self-disclosure is reciprocity, getting back an amount and kind of information equivalent or equal to what you reveal. A second important ingredient in successful self-disclosure is timing, and that is at the right time. Disclosures made privately are perceived as more appropriate and intimate than disclosures that are made publicly when it comes to social media. That's the first section. The second section will deal with models of relational dynamics.